drill bit screamed into my third finger, and I knew I was going to lose it. Not new in the way you know the sun will rise or that the Emperor protects. New in the way bone recognizes its own breaking, the way flesh understands when it has been given up to the machine. The production line never stopped. That is the first lesson they teach you on Forge World Argentum 9. The second lesson is that you do not matter. The third lesson is that the first two lessons are the same lesson said in different ways. I was 8 years old when they brought me to the assessment halls. My mother held my hand so tight I thought my bones would crack. She was crying, but trying not to let me see. I did not understand then. I understand now. We stood in lines that stretched further than my child eyes could see. Hundreds of us, maybe thousands, all born in the same cycle, all measured and weighed and judged according to standards I would not learn for another decade. The assessment halls smelled like machine oil and fear sweat. Above us, servo skulls drifted in lazy circles, their optical sensors glowing red in the permanent twilight of the forge. The ceiling was so high I could not see it. Everything in the forge is like that. Too big, too vast. Made for machines, not men. The walls were bare metal, scarred with decades of use, covered in Gothic script that praised the machine god in languages I could not read. Every surface was cold, every surface was hard. There was no comfort anywhere in that place, no softness, no mercy. A tech priest approached our line. I remember his face, or what remained of it. The left side was pure augmetic, chrome and copper and brass fitted together with the precision that only the mechanicus achieves. His right eye was gone, replaced by a lens assembly that clicked and whirred as it focused on each child. The sound was loud in the relative quiet of the hall. Click whir, measuring, calculating, judging. His remaining organic eye was gray, empty of anything I recognized as human emotion. The skin around it was waxy, dead-looking, stretched tight over metal supports that had been installed beneath. When he spoke, his voice came from a Vox unit embedded in his throat. The sound bypassed his mouth entirely, a trick that made it seem like his words came from everywhere and nowhere. "Children of the Omnissiah," he said, and the Vox unit gave his voice a flat, emotionless quality that terrified me more than any anger would have. "You have been born into service. The machine, God has seen fit to grant you existence. Now you will be measured. Your worth will be determined. Those who meet the sacred standards will be given purpose. Those who fail will be given different purpose. All serve. All are consumed. Blessed be the machine." They separated us from our parents then. My mother's hand was pulled from mine by a servitor. A real servitor, not just a worker with augmetics. This thing had been human once, but was barely human now. Its face was slack, expressionless, the eyes empty of everything except the most basic operational awareness. Tubes ran from its neck into its chest. Mechanical arms extended from its shoulders where organic arms should have been. It moved my mother back to the waiting area with gentle, inexorable force. She did not fight. Fighting would have been pointless. Fighting would have been noticed. Noticed things that fight are given to the servitor conversion forges. I watched her go, watched her face crumple, watched her mouth open in a silent cry. The servitor holding her was stronger than any human could be. Its grip was perfect, calculated, designed to restrain without causing injury. She disappeared into the crowd of other parents, other families being torn apart. I never saw her again. That was the moment childhood ended for all of us. The testing took 3 days, or 3 hours, or 3 years. Time in the assessment halls has no meaning. They kept us in holding pens between tests, fed us nutrient paste from dispensers mounted on the walls. Let us sleep on metal floors with thin blankets that smelled like disinfectant and previous occupants. The paste tasted like nothing, like eating the concept of food without any of the satisfaction. We ate it anyway. Hunger is a great teacher. Hunger makes you compliant. The tests themselves are blurred in my memory now. Decades of chemical exposure and exhaustion have eaten away at the details. But I remember the machines, always the machines. Devices that measured bone density, lung capacity, manual dexterity, pain tolerance, ability to follow complex instructions, resistance to mind-breaking tedium. Each test was administered by tech priests or servitors, never by humans, never by anyone who might show sympathy or mercy. One test stands out. They put us in individual cells, small metal boxes barely large enough to stand in. Gave each of us a data slate with a single blinking cursor. The instructions were simple. Type the number sequence that appeared on the screen. When you finish one sequence, another begins. Continue until told to stop. I typed numbers. Hours passed. The sequences got longer, more complex. My fingers hurt. The metal keys were cold and hard. Each keystroke made a clicking sound that echoed in the tiny cell. My eyes burned from staring at the glowing screen. The child in the cell next to mine started crying after the first hour. I could hear her through the thin walls, sobbing, pleading, asking for her mother. By the third hour, she was just making sounds, no longer recognizably human speech. Animal sounds, fear sounds, the sound of a mind beginning to crack. By the fifth hour, she was silent. They took her away. I never learned what happened to her, never learned if silence meant she had passed the test or failed it so completely they decided she was not worth testing further. I kept typing. I understood, even at 8 years old, that stopping meant disappearing like her, so I typed until my fingers bled. Typed until the numbers stopped making sense and became just shapes. Typed until I could not remember any existence except the cursor and the numbers. Typed until a tech adept finally opened my cell and logged my results. Adequate, he said. Just that one word. Then I was led to another room. The branding room was smaller than the testing cells, a single chair, metal, bolted to the floor. Restraint straps hanging from the arms and legs. A tech priest waited there with a branding tool. Electric. The tip glowed orange-red. I was strapped into the chair. Did not resist. Resisting would have been noted. The tech priest positioned the brand against my forehead, right between my eyes, where everyone could see it, where I would see it every time I looked in a reflective surface for the rest of my life. Identification number Alpha 7 94 Sigma 447, the tech priest said. Designation Manufactorum Labora, Munitions Production, Status Probationary. May the Omnissiah guide your service. The brand pressed into my flesh. The pain was sharp and bright and clean. I smelled my own skin cooking, heard the sizzle, felt the metal burning through layers of skin into the bone beneath. I did not cry out, did not scream, did not give them any reason to mark me as weak. The pain was extraordinary, but I had learned in the testing that showing pain was a mistake. So I sat there, took it, let them burn their mark into my face, let them claim my flesh for the machine god. When they removed the brand, I could feel the heat radiating from the wound. Blood and clear fluid leaked down my face. The tech priest dabbed at it with a cloth, cleaning away the worst of it, then sprayed something cold on the burn. Antiseptic. No painkiller. Pain is a teacher. The wound would heal, but the scar would remain forever. Everyone would know I belonged to the Mechanicus. Everyone would know I was property of the Omnissiah. Everyone would know I was less than human now. They returned us to our parents on the 4th day. My mother fell to her knees when she saw me, pressed her forehead to my hands, thanked the Emperor and the Omnissiah that I had been found acceptable. I wanted to tell her that acceptable was not the same as safe. That acceptable only meant I had earned the right to work until my body failed. But I was 8 and did not have the words. She took me home to our hab unit, fed me real food for the first time in days, let me sleep in my own bed. The hab unit was on level 47 of Hive Sigma. 1 room, 12 square meters, a bed, a cooking unit, a waste recycler, a single window that looked out over the Manufactorum sprawl. Orange sky, always orange. The pollution from the forges stained everything that color. My mother had tried to make the space comfortable. Pictures on the walls, a small shrine to the Emperor in the corner, a blanket she had sewn herself from scraps. These things meant nothing to the Mechanicus, but they meant everything to her. She held me that night, rocked me like I was still a baby, sang old songs in a language I did not know. Songs from her homeworld, maybe. From before she came to the forge. I had never asked about her life before. Children born on forge worlds do not think about before. There is only the forge, only the now, only the endless present of production and consumption. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry. I tried to keep you safe, tried to give you a good life, but there is no safety here, no good life, only work, only service, only the machine." I did not understand then what she meant. I understand now. She had known what was coming, had known from the moment I was born that I would be tested, that I would be assigned, that I would be consumed by the forge just as she had been, just as everyone was. There was no escape, no alternative. The Mechanicus owned us, body and soul. We existed only to serve. It was the last night of my childhood, the last night I would sleep in that bed, the last night I would know my mother's embrace, the last night before everything changed. The assignment came 3 days later. A servo skull delivered the message directly to our door. The mechanical cherub hovered in the doorway, its metal wings clicking softly, its child skull face frozen in a permanent expression of beatific servitude. My mother took the data crystal from the brass claw extended from its belly, inserted it into our ancient slate reader, read the words there. Her face went very white, very still. She looked at me and I saw something break behind her eyes. "Manufactorum Block Sigma 7, she whispered. "Production line 681, munitions assembly, 20-hour shifts. Report in 2 days for orientation and augmetic fitting." I did not understand all the words, but I understood her face, understood the way she held me that night, so tight I could barely breathe, the way she whispered prayers to the Emperor in my ear until I fell asleep, the way she looked at me the next morning like she was trying to memorize my face before I changed into something else. The next 2 days passed too quickly and too slowly. My mother tried to prepare me, tried to explain what was coming. But how do you explain the forge to a child? How do you make them understand that they are about to enter a hell that will grind them down until nothing remains? She told me to be strong, told me to be obedient, told me to never question, never resist, never show weakness. These were the rules of survival, the only rules that mattered. On the morning of my assignment, she walked me to the transport station, held my hand the entire way. Other children walked beside us, other parents with the same broken expressions. We were not alone in our grief. Everyone on the forge world loses their children to the manufactorums. Everyone knows this pain, but knowing does not make it easier. The transport was a cargo hauler, massive, designed to move materials, not people. But we were materials now, biological components being delivered to our assigned stations. We climbed into the back, dozens of children, all 8 to 12 years old, all marked with fresh brands, all silent. No one spoke, no one cried. We had learned already that showing emotion was a mistake. My mother stood at the station watching as the hauler pulled away. I watched her through the open cargo door. watched her get smaller, watched her disappear into the orange haze of pollution and distance. I never saw her again, never learned what happened to her, never got to say goodbye. That is how the Mechanicus works. Clean breaks, no lingering attachments, no emotional complications. You belong to the machine now. The past is irrelevant. The Manufactorum block was a city unto itself. Kilometers of production lines stretching into poisoned horizon. The air was thick with particulate matter, ash and metal dust and chemical smoke that hung in the air like fog. I could taste it. Metal and poison. It burned my throat with every breath. I would learn later that unaugmented humans who breathe this air die within 15 years. Most workers last 10. The truly unlucky last 20. Their lungs turn to leather and scar tissue, coughing blood with every breath until they finally collapse at their stations. The lucky ones die quick. Heart attack, stroke, aneurysm, something that ends it fast. The unlucky ones are dragged to the augmetic bays where they are fitted with respirators and stimulant pumps and sent back to work. The Omnissiah wastes nothing, not even broken flesh. Every body can be used, every mind can be programmed, everyone serves until there is nothing left to serve with. The Manufactorum buildings towered over us, metal and stone. Kilometers tall, covered in pipes and vents and smokestacks that belched orange fire into the orange sky. The noise was incredible, a constant roar of machinery, hammers striking, presses stamping, conveyors rattling, generators humming. The sound was so loud it made my chest vibrate, made my teeth ache. I would never know silence again. The noise would be constant, forever, until my ears failed and they replaced them with augmetic hearing receptors that would make the noise even louder. We were herded off the transport and into a processing facility. More bare metal, more cold surfaces, more servo skulls drifting overhead. Tech priests moved between us, scanning our brands, verifying our assignments, sorting us into groups. I was placed with 40 other children, all assigned to Line 681, all marked for munitions production. A tech priest addressed our group. "You are components now," he said through his Vox unit. The sound was flat, emotionless, like listening to a machine read statistics. Components in the great machine of the Imperium. The Omnissiah has blessed you with purpose. You will manufacture bolt rounds for the Astra Militarum. Each bolt round you produce may kill an enemy of mankind. Each enemy killed brings glory to the Emperor and the Machine God. Your quota is 2,000 units per shift. 20-hour shifts, 4 hours rest between shifts. No variation, no exception. Failure to meet quota results in corrective measures. Repeated failure results in reassignment to duties more suited to your capabilities. Reassignment. That word again. They said it so casually, like it was just a change in job duties. But we all knew what it meant. We had all seen the servitors, had all watched those empty-eyed things shuffle past, had all wondered if some fragment of consciousness remained trapped inside, if they could still think, still feel, still scream silently into the void of their lobotomized minds. The tech priest continued. You will be fitted with basic augmetics, optical enhancement, neural interface ports, basic skeletal reinforcement. These modifications will increase your productivity and extend your useful service life. The procedures are necessary. The procedures are sacred. The procedures are a gift from the Omnissiah. Accept them with gratitude. They took us to the augmetic bay that same day. No preparation, no warning, just marched us into a massive room filled with surgical tables. Hundreds of them, thousands maybe, and on many of the tables, bodies. Some screaming, some silent, some already empty. Being fitted with mechanical parts, having flesh carved away, being transformed from human into something else. The smell hit me first, blood and chemicals and burning flesh. The smell of the augmetic bay is something you never forget. It gets into your clothes, your hair, your skin. Years later, long after you have received your last modification, you can still smell it sometimes, in your dreams, in your nightmares, in the rare moments when your mind drifts away from the work. They strapped me to a table, metal, cold, with grooves carved into the surface for blood drainage. I did not resist. Resisting would have been noted. A tech priest approached with his tools, drills, scalpels, implant guns, neural interface spikes. He wore no expression, showed no emotion, just looked at me the way you might look at a piece of equipment that needs maintenance. Subject Alpha 794 Sigma 447, he said, reading from a data slate. Age 8 standard years. Assignment, line 681, station 447. Required modifications, optical enhancement, left eye, neural interface ports, base of skull, skeletal reinforcement, spine and ribs. Estimated survival rate, 87.3%. Begin procedure. No anesthetic. Pain is a teacher. Pain reminds us of the weakness of flesh. Pain shows us the superiority of the machine. I watched as he brought the first tool to my face. A cutting laser, blue-white light. He cut into my left eye socket with steady, practiced movements. The pain was beyond anything I'd experienced. Beyond anything I'd imagined was possible. Not just physical pain. Something worse. The violation of having your body opened, your flesh carved, your very self being altered by someone else's hands. I screamed, could not help it, could not stop it, screamed until my voice was raw, screamed until my throat bled, screamed until I had no air left in my lungs. Around me, other children screamed too, a symphony of agony that echoed through the augmetic bay. The tech priests worked with perfect calm. They had heard this music 10,000 times before, would hear it 10,000 times more. The tech priest extracted my organic eye, so just pulled it out. Nerve, muscle, tissue, all severed with clinical precision. I could feel it, feel the wrongness of it, feel something fundamental being taken from me. He held the eye up to examine it, turned it over in his mechanical fingers, then dropped it into a disposal bin with dozens of other eyes. Other pieces of children, other fragments of humanity being discarded. He installed the replacement, a brass lens assembly, wires and circuits and focusing mechanisms. He drove it into my empty socket, connected the neural interfaces, burned the pathways into my brain so the mechanical eye could interface with my organic nervous system. The pain was constant, unending, a white-hot fire that consumed my entire head. I screamed until I could not scream anymore, until I could only make choking, gasping sounds. When he finished with my eye, he moved to my skull, drilled ports into the bone at the base. 3 of them, neural interface jacks for future modifications. The drill bit into my skull with a high-pitched whine. I felt the vibration through my entire body, felt bone fragmenting, felt the drill pierce through, felt him install the brass ports, bolt them into place, seal them with chemical adhesive that burned worse than the drilling. The skeletal reinforcement was last. Injections along my spine and ribs, liquid metal, nanomachines, things I did not understand and would never understand. The liquid felt cold going in, then hot, then like fire, like someone had replaced my bones with molten steel. The pain was total, complete. There was no part of me that did not hurt. I lost consciousness 3 times during the procedure. Each time they injected me with stimulants and brought me back. Could not let me escape into darkness. Had to keep me awake. Had to make sure I felt everything. When it was finally over, when the tech priest had completed his work and logged my modifications, they unstrapped me from the table. I could not stand, could not move, could only lie there, shaking, bleeding, crying without tears. A servitor picked me up, carried me to a recovery area. Dozens of other children lay there, all freshly modified, all suffering. No medical care, no pain management. Just time to let the wounds close, let the modifications settle, let the body accept the intrusion of the machine. I learned later that 12 children died during the augmentation process that day. Their bodies could not handle the modifications. Their systems went into shock. Their hearts stopped, or their brains swelled, or infections set in. The tech priests logged their deaths, marked them as acceptable losses, ordered replacement candidates from the next assessment cycle. Nothing was wasted. The bodies were processed for parts. Some organs were still viable. Some augmetics could be salvaged. Everything served the machine. The recovery period was 6 hours. Then they woke us, gave us uniforms, gray coveralls made of synthetic fiber. They itched. They smelled like chemicals, but they were standard. Everyone wore them, worker and overseer alike. The only way to tell rank was by the quality of the augmetics. The more metal you had, the higher your position. Eventually, you might have so much metal that you were no longer recognizably human. That was when you became tech priest, when you transcended flesh entirely and became one with the machine. They marched us to the hab blocks, massive dormitories that housed thousands of workers. The one for line 681 was a single vast room with bunks stacked 6 high. Metal frames, thin mattresses, no privacy, no personal space. 3,000 workers shared this space, slept in shifts according to production schedules. When one shift left for work, another shift returned to sleep. The bunks were never empty, never unused. Like the production lines, they ran constantly. I was assigned bunk C447-4, 4th level. The man who had slept there before me had died 3 days ago, heart failure at age 32. His name tag was still bolted to the bunk frame. Rikan Toll, born in cycle 900, 56.M41. Died in cycle 988.M41. 32 years of faithful service. His belongings, if he had any, were gone. His body had already been processed. Only the name tag remained, a marker that he had existed, that he had served, that he had been consumed. I climbed up to the bunk. My body hurt. Everything hurt. The modifications were still fresh, still bleeding in places, still screaming with pain, but pain was irrelevant. The shift started in 2 hours. I would have that long to rest, to try to sleep despite the pain and the fear and the noise of 3,000 other workers moving through their own routines. 2 hours. Then I would go to the production line for the first time. Then I would begin my 26 years at Station 447. Those 2 hours passed too quickly. A klaxon sounded, loud, piercing, a sound designed to penetrate even the deepest sleep. Around me, workers stirred, climbed down from bunks, lined up at the waste recyclers, at the ration dispensers, at the doors leading to the manufacturing floor. I followed, did what they did, ate the gray paste from the dispenser, used the waste recycler, joined the line heading to work. The walk to line 681 took 15 minutes, through corridors carved from solid rock, through massive airlocks that sealed behind us, through chambers so vast I could not see the ceilings. The sound grew louder with every step, the roar of the manufactorum. Thousands of machines running simultaneously, millions of moving parts, the great engine of production that never stopped, never slowed, never rested. Line 681 was one of hundreds in Manufactorum Block Sigma 7, a kilometer-long conveyor system that moved bolt shell casings through 23 different stations. Each station performed a specific task. Each worker was responsible for one small piece of the whole. I was assigned to Station 447. My job was to install propellant charges, take empty shell from the conveyor, verify it meets specifications using my new augmetic eye, fill it with propellant from the dispenser, seal it using the compression tool, place it back on the conveyor, repeat 2,000 times per shift, every shift, forever. The station was marked with faded yellow paint. 447, my number, my place, my entire world. A tech adept stood there waiting. He showed me the process once, only once. Take, verify, fill, seal, place. His movements were precise, practiced, perfect. Then he stepped aside and gestured for me to begin. I took my place at the station, picked up the first shell, looked at it with my new augmetic eye. The lens adjusted automatically, showed me measurements, tolerances, specifications, told me whether the shell was acceptable. I had no idea how it worked, no idea what the numbers meant, but the eye knew. The machine knew. That was enough. I filled it with propellant. The dispenser was automatic. Pressed the shell against the nozzle, wait for the hiss of compressed gas, wait for the charge to flow in. The smell was sharp, chemical, dangerous. I would learn later that prolonged exposure to these fumes caused neural damage, caused mutations, caused cancer, but safety equipment was minimal, a basic respirator. Nothing more. Workers were cheaper than proper safety measures. When one died, another took their place. The Omnissiah's logic was perfect, cold, efficient. I sealed the shell. The compression tool was heavy, mechanical. I had to use both hands to operate it. Press the shell into the die, squeeze the trigger, wait for the metal to crimp, wait for the seal to complete. My hands shook. The tool was designed for adult hands, for someone bigger, stronger, but I was what they had. I would have to adapt or fail. And failure was not an option. I placed the shell back on the conveyor, watched it move away, watched it travel to Station 448, to the next worker, to the next step in the process. Then I took another shell, repeated the process, again, again, again. I met Gren during my third shift. He was working Station 442, 5 stations up the line from mine. He was ancient by worker standards, 43 years old. Both arms replaced with crude mechanical prosthetics. His back was bent from decades of hunching over assembly stations. One leg was shorter than the other, the result of a poorly installed augmetic hip joint. He walked with a lurching, limping gait that made him look like a broken clockwork toy, but his eyes were still sharp, still aware, still recognizably human despite everything the Forge had done to him. He came to my station during a brief maintenance pause. The line had stopped for servitor repairs on Station 438. We had maybe 5 minutes of stillness, 5 minutes of relative quiet. The noise was still incredible, but compared to the normal roar, it was almost peaceful. "You are new," he said. His voice was a rasping whisper. The Vox unit in his throat had been damaged years ago and never properly repaired. Every word came out distorted, painful sounding. "You still have skin on your hands. Real skin that will not last." I looked at my hands. They were small, child hands. The skin was already red and irritated from the chemicals. Small burns, small wounds, nothing major yet. But Gren was right. The flesh would not last. Eventually, the damage would be too severe. Eventually, they would replace my hands with mechanical versions, just like they had replaced his, just like they replaced everyone's eventually. "How long?" I asked. My voice was hoarse. The augmetic surgery had damaged my throat somehow, made speaking difficult. I would learn to use hand signals eventually. Most workers did. Speech was inefficient anyway, required breath that was better used for work. 3 months, Gren said. Maybe 6 if you are careful. But you cannot be too careful. The chemicals do their work regardless. The flesh always fails. The machine endures. He paused, looked down the line, checking for overseers. For tech priests who might object to conversation during work hours. Seeing none, he continued. Listen to me, child. I've been here 35 years. Since I was 8, like you. I've seen thousands come, seen thousands go. Most last 10 years, maybe 12. Then they are taken, reassigned. You understand? They become servitors, lose everything that makes them human. I have lasted longer because I am good at what I do, because my productivity stays high, because the machine finds me useful. But it will end. For me, for you, for everyone. This is the only truth that matters. We exist to serve until we cannot serve anymore. Then we are consumed. Remember this. Accept this. It is the only way to survive. The line restarted then. The klaxon sounded. The conveyors began moving. Gren returned to his station without another word. I returned to my work. Take, verify, fill, seal, place, repeat. His words echoed in my mind for hours, for days, for years. We exist to serve until we cannot serve anymore. Then we are consumed. The truth of the forge, the truth of the mechanicus, the truth that defined everything. The first 3 months destroyed my hands. The chemicals we used to seal the propellant charges ate through flesh like acid. Burns were constant. The skin on my fingertips began to peel away, layer by layer, day by day, until I could see bones showing through, until every touch sent waves of agony up my arms. I kept working, had to. Stopping meant quota failure. Quota failure meant corrective measures. Too many corrective measures meant reassignment. After the 5th time, my fingertips were reduced to weeping, infected blisters. They took me to the Augmetic Bay, the same bay where they had installed my eye, the same tech priests, the same emotionless efficiency. They cut away my fingers, all 10 of them, severed them at the first knuckle, installed mechanical replacements, basic steel digits with simple joint mechanisms. No sensation, no feeling. Just crude manipulators that could grip tools and withstand chemical exposure. The installation was agonizing. They drove metal pins through my finger bones, sealed them with adhesive, connected the neural interfaces so I could control the mechanical digits with thought. But the connection was imperfect. There was always a delay, a fraction of a second between intention and action. My productivity dropped by 4%. 4% was noted, logged, added to my permanent record, a mark against me. But my hands no longer burned, no longer hurt with every movement. The absence of pain was its own kind of horror. I could no longer feel texture, could no longer tell hot from cold by touch, could no longer experience the physical world except through pressure and resistance. I was 11 years old, and already I was more machine than human. Already I'd lost pieces of myself that could never be recovered. The work continued. Shift after shift, day after day, year after year. Time lost meaning. There were no seasons on the forge, no day and night in the true sense. Only the eternal orange twilight, only the constant cycle of work and rest, work and rest, work and rest. The days blurred together. Weeks passed like hours, months passed like days. Before I knew it, I'd been at Station 447 for 3 years, then 5, then 10. I met Sarai when I was 11. She was assigned to Station 448, right next to mine. Her job was to install primers into the shells I'd filled with propellant. Same age as me, same hollow-eyed exhaustion, same augmetic scars on her face and hands. We did not speak at first, could not, over the noise. But our eyes met across the narrow gap between our stations, and something passed between us. Recognition, the knowledge that we were not entirely alone. That somewhere in this hell, another human being still existed who remembered what it meant to be human. We found ways to communicate despite the noise and the rules against conversation. Small gestures during the brief moments when we both happened to look up at the same time. A nod, a slight smile, a raising of mechanical fingers in greeting. These tiny moments of connection became precious, became something to look forward to, became proof that I still existed as more than just a component in the production line. Eventually, during a scheduled maintenance shutdown, we managed to speak. The line was still. The noise had dropped to a low rumble. Workers were supposed to remain at their stations during maintenance, but enforcement was lax. The overseers were busy elsewhere. We stepped together into the narrow space between our stations. "I'm Sarai," she said. Her voice was soft, hoarse from disuse. Most workers stopped speaking after the first few years, stopped having anything to say, stopped remembering how language worked. Sarai Klein, Hab Block Epsilon. I've been here 3 years. Tomas? I said. Tomas Wren, Hab Block Sigma. 3 years for me, too. We must have been processed together. She nodded. I remember the assessment halls. Remember the augmetic bay. Remember the screaming. Remember thinking I would die. Remember wishing I would die. I understood. We all remembered the beginning, remembered the moment when childhood ended and this new life began. The moment when we stopped being people and became components. The memory never faded, never lost its power to hurt. It stayed with you, a constant reminder of what you had lost, what you would never have again. Do you remember before? I asked. Before the assessment? Before the forge? She shook her head slowly. Barely. Fragments. My mother's voice. A song she used to sing, but the details are gone. The forge eats memory, replaces it with the work. Soon there will be nothing left but this. Just the line, just the stations, just the endless repetition. The maintenance ended then. The line restarted. We returned to our work without another word. But something had changed. I was no longer completely alone. Sarai existed. Sarai remembered. Sarai was human, or something close to it. That was enough. That had to be enough. We developed a routine over the next years, brief moments of contact during maintenance shutdowns, quiet conversations in the corners of the Hab block during rest periods, small exchanges that kept us anchored, kept us human, or something like human. We talked about memories, about the lives we had lived before the assessment, about our parents, our homes, the worlds that had existed before the forge consumed us. Sarai told me about her brother, younger than her by 2 years. He had failed the assessment, failed completely. She did not know what happened to him after that. No one knew what happened to the failures. They disappeared. Some said they were killed. Some said they were used for medical experiments. Some said they were turned into servitors immediately, without even the years of work that the rest of us received. No one knew for certain. The Mechanicus did not explain, did not justify, just took the failures away, and that was the end of it. I told her about my mother, about the last night in our Hab unit, about the way she had held me, about the songs she had sung. Sarai listened with her augmetic eyes focused on my face. She did not interrupt, did not judge, just listened, just shared the burden of memory with me. When I finished, she reached out and touched my mechanical hand with hers, metal on metal. No sensation, no feeling, but the gesture was enough. The acknowledgement that my pain was real, that my loss mattered, that I existed. The years ground on. I grew taller but not stronger. The work and the chemicals and the constant exposure to toxins prevented proper development. At 16, I looked like a half-starved child with an old man's face. My spine had developed a permanent curve from years of hunching over the station. My shoulders were locked in a constant hunch. The respirator they had installed in my chest after I developed chronic lung problems at age 14 clicked with every breath. A constant reminder that my organic systems were failing, that more augmetics would be needed, that I was slowly becoming more machine than flesh. My lungs had failed gradually, started with a persistent cough. Dry at first, then wet, then bloody. The air in the manufactorum was poison, particulate matter, chemical smoke, metal dust, all of it getting into lungs that had no protection, no filtration, just thin organic tissue trying to process air that was more toxin than oxygen. By the time I was 13, I was coughing blood with every breath. By 14, I could barely breathe at all. They installed the respirator during a scheduled augmentation cycle, opened my chest, removed my damaged lungs, replaced them with mechanical bellows and chemical filters. The surgery took 6 hours. I was awake for all of it, could feel them cutting, could feel them pulling organs out, could feel them installing the machinery. The pain was beyond description, beyond comprehension, beyond anything a human mind should have to endure. But I endured it. I had no choice. The alternative was death, and death meant they would harvest my body for parts, would use my organs in other workers, would waste nothing. Better to live, better to accept the machine, better to become less human if it meant remaining conscious a little longer. The respirator changed everything. I could breathe without pain for the first time in years, could work longer without the constant burning in my chest. My productivity increased by 9%. 9% was noted, approved. The investment in my augmentation had been justified. I was worth keeping, worth maintaining, worth the resources required to keep me functional. But I could hear my own breathing now, the mechanical click-hiss of the respirator pumping air into my lungs. Click-hiss, constant, unending. A reminder with every breath that I was no longer fully human, that the machine had taken another piece of me, that soon there would be nothing organic left. Gren came to talk to me after my respirator installation, found me during a rest period, sat on the edge of my bunk. His mechanical hands gripped the metal frame with perfect steadiness. No tremor, no weakness, just the cold precision of machinery. "You have crossed the threshold," he said. His damaged Vox unit made his words sound like metal scraping metal. "You are more machine than flesh now. This is good. The flesh is weak. The flesh fails. The machine endures. The machine is eternal. Soon you will understand. Soon you will accept. Soon you will be grateful for the machine's gifts." I looked at him. Really looked at him. Tried to see the human being that remained beneath all the augmetics. Beneath the metal arms and the damaged Vox unit and the optical sensors that had replaced his eyes years ago. Tried to see some spark of consciousness, some awareness, some evidence that Gren was still in there. Still thinking, still feeling, still human in some meaningful sense. What I saw terrified me. His eyes were empty, not physically. The optical sensors worked fine, but there was nothing behind them. No emotion, no personality, no self. Just operational awareness. Just the basic consciousness required to perform his assigned function. Gren was already gone. Had been gone for years, maybe. The thing sitting on my bunk was just meat and metal continuing to function. A biological machine running on programming and habit and the last dying remnants of human instinct. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been like this?" Gren tilted his head. The motion was too precise, too mechanical. A servo response, not a human gesture. "Like what?" "Empty," I said. "How long since you felt anything? How long since you cared?" He was silent for a long time, his optical sensors focused on my face, whirred as they adjusted, clicked as they processed. When he finally spoke, his voice was even flatter than usual. "I do not understand the question. I feel, I care. I serve the Omnissiah. I produce, I meet quota. These are the things that matter. These are the only things that matter." He left after that, returned to his bunk, lay down for his scheduled rest period, closed his eyes, powered down like a machine entering standby mode. I watched him, watched the slight rise and fall of his chest, watched the indicator lights on his augmetics dim, watched a human being who was no longer really human anymore. And I understood. This was my future. This was everyone's future. Eventually, the chemicals and the toxins and the constant work would erode us, strip away personality, strip away emotion, strip away everything except the most basic functions. We would become biological servitors, technically still conscious, technically still human, but empty, dead in every way that mattered. Gren disappeared 3 months later, was taken during a shift change. The Skitarii came for him. 2 of them, tall, augmented beyond anything we workers ever received. Armed with shock pikes and neural disruptors, they marched straight to Station 442. Gren looked up at them, nodded once, set down his tools with careful precision, walked away between them without protest, without fear, without any visible emotion at all. I watched him go, watched him disappear through the great doors that led to the conversion forges. Knew I would never see Gren again, would only see what Gren became, what we all became eventually. The thing that waited for us at the end of the line. They brought him back 3 weeks later, or brought back his body. The thing that looked like Gren but was not Gren anymore. I was working my station when I saw it. Station 442 had developed a fault. The machine spirits were angry, required appeasement, required repairs. A servitor was called to fix it. The servitor that arrived was Gren. Same damaged Vox unit, same lurching gait from the poorly installed hip joint. Same mechanical arms, but everything else was wrong. The eyes were vacant, empty. When he looked in my direction, there was no recognition, no awareness, no memory of the 35 years he had spent at Station 442. No memory of the conversations we had shared, no memory of his own name. He fixed the machine with mechanical efficiency. His hands moved with practiced precision, connected the right wires, tightened the right bolts, performed the required calibrations. The machine spirit was appeased. Station 442 resumed operation. The servitor that had been Gren departed without a word, without a backward glance, without any sign that he had ever been human. I thought about him for days, for weeks, for years. Thought about the fact that his body still moved, still breathed, still functioned, but Gren was dead, had been dead the moment they took him to the conversion forges. The thing that came back was just a puppet, meat and metal animated by programming and barely enough neural activity to follow basic instructions. I wondered if some part of him was still in there, trapped behind walls of cortical blocks and lobotomy scars, screaming silently into the void, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything except follow the programming and watch helplessly as his body performed tasks he no longer controlled. Or if the process was truly complete, if the death of consciousness was total and absolute, if nothing remained of Gren except organic components repurposed for servitor duties. I hoped it was the latter. Hoped that death was total, that there was no awareness left, that Gren had simply ceased to exist rather than existing in some trapped, helpless state. But I had no way to know, no way to be certain. The Mechanicus did not explain, did not share the details of the conversion process, just took workers who failed and returned servitors. The rest was mystery, was horror. was something we all tried not to think about too carefully because thinking about it too carefully made it impossible to continue. But I thought about it anyway. Could not stop thinking about it. Because I knew my turn was coming. Knew that one day the Skitarii would come for me. Would march me to the conversion forges. Would strap me to a table. Would drill into my skull. Would cut away pieces of my brain. Would lobotomize me. Would reduce me to a servitor. Would kill everything I was and repurpose my body for whatever task the Mechanicus deemed appropriate. This was not a possibility. This was certainty. This was the fate that awaited every worker who did not die first. The only question was when. When would my body fail? When would my mind break? When would my productivity drop below acceptable levels? When would the Mechanicus decide I was worth more as a servitor than as a worker? The answers were unknowable. All I could do was work, meet quota, stay functional, delay the inevitable as long as possible, live one more day, one more shift, one more shell. That was all anyone could do. I was 19 when the accident happened, the one that changed everything. Station 445 had been experiencing problems for weeks. The hydraulic system was failing. Pressure fluctuations, temperature spikes, warning indicators that were ignored because shutting down for repairs would have meant missed quotas. Missed quotas meant corrective measures for the entire production line. So the problems were logged, noted, added to maintenance schedules that were perpetually deferred. And the line kept running, kept operating with failing equipment, kept pushing systems beyond their safe limits, because the quota was sacred, because production could not stop, because the Omnissiah demanded service above all else, even safety. The hydraulic line burst during a night shift. The failure was catastrophic. Instant. The line ruptured completely, sent superheated coolant spraying across 3 stations at tremendous pressure. The worker at Station 445 was killed instantly. The coolant was hot enough to boil steel, hot enough to melt flesh from bone. The man, I never learned his name, was standing directly in front of the rupture when it happened. He did not even have time to scream, just died. Instantly. Completely. His body fell in pieces. The worker at Station 446 was luckier. Sort of. The spray caught his right side, took his arm, burned away most of his face, but he was still alive, still conscious, screaming, making sounds I had never heard a human make, sounds that were more animal than human, sounds of agony so complete that language could not express it. The servitors dragged him away, to the augmetic bay, to repairs. He would survive, would be fitted with replacements, would be returned to work. But whatever part of him was still human was gone, burned away, lost in that moment of catastrophic failure. I was at Station 447. The spray caught the edge of my workstation, caught my left hand. The synthetic skin melted instantly. The mechanical joints seized. The neural connections burned out. I stood there, watching my hand die, watching metal warp and blacken, watching wires spark and smoke, smelling the chemical stench of melting metal and cooking flesh. And all I could think was, thank the Emperor. It was just my hand. Thank the Emperor, I was still alive. Thank the Emperor, I could still work. They took me to the augmetic bay. Standard procedure. Damaged augmetics must be repaired or replaced within 6 hours, or the worker is reassigned. Cannot have non-functional components on the line. Cannot have workers who cannot meet quota. I went without protest, without complaint. The alternative was worse. The augmetic bay was busy, always busy. Workers streamed in constantly, burns, breaks, failures, the normal wear and tear of forged life. Tech priests moved between surgical tables with mechanical efficiency, cutting, installing, repairing, maintaining the biological machinery that kept production running. They strapped me to a table, The same table I'd been on before, the same stains on the metal, the same grooves for blood drainage. A tech priest examined my damaged hand, scanned it with an optical sensor, read the data on a slate, made calculations. "Complete replacement required," he said. His voice was flat, clinical, like he was discussing a faulty servo motor, not a piece of someone's body. Neural interface compromised. Structural integrity failed. Salvageable components? None. Recommendation: full amputation and replacement with improved model. Will increase productivity by estimated 14.3%. Begin procedure. The cutting was agony. They used a plasma torch to sever my arm at the wrist. The heat was incredible, overwhelming, beyond anything pain receptors should be able to transmit. I screamed the way I had screamed when they installed my first augmetics all those years ago. Screamed the way everyone screams in the augmetic bay. The tech priest did not pause, did not slow. Just cut through flesh and metal with steady, practiced movements until my hand fell away completely. He installed the replacement with the same clinical precision. "A better model," he said. "Improved joint mechanisms, better grip strength, more durable construction, would last longer, would perform better." I watched him work, watched him bolt the mechanical assembly to the stump of my wrist, watched him drive neural interface pins into my arm bones, watched him seal everything with chemical adhesive and synthetic skin. The pain was constant, total. But I was used to pain by now, had been used to it for years. Pain was just another constant of forge life. Like the noise, like the chemical air, like the knowledge that death was always one shift away. When he finished, he injected me with stimulants to override the shock, gave me a data slate with care instructions, told me to return to Station 447 immediately. Downtime was logged, would be deducted from rest periods. The Omnissiah's efficiency was perfect, every minute accounted for, every second measured. Nothing wasted. I returned to work. The new hand was cold, heavy, responded sluggishly to my neural commands. The interface was imperfect. There was always a delay. Half a second where my mind told my fingers to move and they hesitated before obeying. That half second cost me, made me slower, made me less efficient. My productivity dropped by 3%. 3% was noted, logged, added to my permanent record. A mark against me. Evidence that I was declining. Evidence that my usefulness was decreasing. Evidence that I was approaching the threshold where conversion to servitor would be more cost-effective than continued employment as a worker. The mark stayed in my file forever. Permanent, immutable. Waiting for other marks to join it. Waiting for the day when the accumulated failures would justify my reassignment. But I was still alive. Still conscious. Still human or something like it. That was enough. That had to be enough. I worked, met quota despite the slower hand. Made up the difference by working harder, by pushing my body beyond its limits, by accepting the pain and exhaustion as part of the cost of survival. One more day, one more shift, one more shell. That was all I could do. The years continued. I grew older, but not wiser, just more damaged, more augmented, more broken. At 21, I was already 30% machine. At 23, 40%. At 25, more than half. Each augmetic was a piece of my humanity carved away. Each augmetic was another step toward the threshold where I would no longer be recognizably human, where I would be close enough to servitor that conversion was just a formality. Sarai started to break around this time. She was 21, had been at Station 448 for 13 years. 13 years of chemicals and toxins and noise and pain. 13 years of 20-hour shifts and minimal rest and constant fear. It was too much. The human mind can only endure so much before it starts to fracture, starts to fail, starts to shut down as a defense mechanism against continued suffering. It started small. She would forget small things. Miss a step in the assembly process. Stand at her station staring at nothing for long seconds before remembering what she was supposed to be doing. I tried to cover for her, tried to work faster to make up for her slowing pace, tried to keep her productivity numbers acceptable, but you cannot hide decline on a production line. Every action is monitored, every deviation logged, every mistake recorded. The machine spirits see everything. The tech priests know everything. Nothing escapes notice. Her decline accelerated. She started making mistakes, real mistakes, installing primers incorrectly, missing shells completely, standing at her station unmoving while the conveyor continued its endless rotation. Skitaria overseers noticed, approached her station, examined her work, examined her, scanned her with medical sensors, read the results. Neural degradation, they said. Chemical damage to cognitive centers, declining functionality, recommendation, immediate reassignment to servitor conversion. No appeal, no alternative, just the cold logic of efficiency. She was no longer useful as a worker, would be more useful as a servitor. Simple mathematics, simple economics. The Omnissiah's will was clear. They took her on a morning shift. I had just arrived at my station when the Skitari came for her. She did not resist, did not even seem to fully understand what was happening. Just looked at me with those empty eyes and mouthed words I could not hear over the noise of the manufactorum. I think she was trying to say goodbye. Or maybe she was asking for help. Or maybe she was already too far gone to form coherent thoughts and was just making mouth movements that looked like words. They led her away. She walked between them with that same vacant expression. No fear, no sadness, no anything. Just empty compliance. Just the automatic obedience of someone whose mind had already checked out. Someone who was already gone even though their body still walked. I never saw her again. Never saw what she became. Some part of me was grateful for that. Grateful that I would not have to see her reduced to servitor, would not have to watch her empty eyes looking past me without recognition, would not have to know for certain that Sarai was gone, that the last person I had connected with was dead, that I was truly alone now. After Sarai was taken, I stopped trying to connect with other workers, stopped learning names, stopped making eye contact, stopped hoping for human contact or companionship, just focused on the work. Take shell, verify fill, seal, place, repeat, repeat, repeat until there was nothing else. Until the work was everything, until I forgot there had ever been anything else. The years passed in a gray blur, 22, 23, 24, each year bringing new augmetics, new failures, new pieces of organic system replaced with mechanical parts. Spinal reinforcement at 25 when my back could no longer support the constant hunched position. Optical enhancement upgrade at 27 when my remaining organic eye developed cataracts from toxin exposure. Cardiovascular augmentation at 28 when my heart started failing from decades of stimulant abuse. Each augmetic made me more efficient, more productive, more machine. Each augmetic meant I was worth keeping, worth the investment, worth the resources required to maintain my function. Each augmetic was another piece of Thomas Wren erased from existence. Soon there would be nothing left. Soon I would be less a person and more a biological processor housed in a mechanical chassis. Soon the difference between me and an actual servitor would be purely technical. I was 28 when the tithe came, the great tithe that nearly killed me. That nearly killed all of us. The Astra Militarum needed supplies. A regiment was being deployed to fight in the Hadric sector. Orcs, millions of them. That threatened 3 inhabited systems. The guard needed ammunition, needed it desperately, needed it immediately. The tithe request came from Segmentum Command. Priority, absolute. Timeline, immediate. Quantity, everything. The quotas doubled overnight. 4,000 units per shift instead of 2,000. Shifts extended to 22 hours. Rest periods cut to 2 hours. Ration supplies decreased to bare minimum. Stimulant dosages increased to dangerous, potentially lethal levels. The manufactorum went into crisis mode. Emergency production protocols activated. All safety regulations suspended. All maintenance schedules deferred. All worker protections eliminated. Only production mattered. Only the quota. Only service to the Imperium. Workers began dying within days, collapsing at their stations, hearts giving out from the combination of exhaustion, stimulants, and stress, strokes from elevated blood pressure, organ failure from chemical overload. I watched 3 people die in one shift. Watched them fall. Watched their bodies twitch and convulse. Watched the servitors drag them away while the production line kept moving, always kept moving, never stopping, never slowing. The corpses were processed immediately, organs harvested, augmetics stripped, biomass sent to corpse starch facility. By the end of the week, we were eating them. Eating the processed remains of our co-workers mixed with synthetic proteins and chemical preservatives. The ration paste tasted the same as always. Gray bland. Chemical. We ate it anyway. Knew what was in it. Knew we were consuming the dead. But hunger is a powerful thing. Hunger strips away civilization, strips away morality, strips away everything except the need to survive one more day. So we ate the dead, ate our friends, ate our fellow workers, ate anything that would give us the calories to continue working, to continue producing, to continue serving the machine. I started having dreams during this period. Strange, fragmented things during the brief 2-hour rest periods, dreams of color, of sky that was not orange with pollution, of air that did not burn with every breath, of faces I could no longer quite remember. My mother, Sarai, Gren people who had been real once, people who had mattered, people who were gone now, lost to time and memory and the constant erosion of the forge. The dreams hurt more than any augmetic installation. Hurt because they reminded me that I had been human once, that there had been a time before the forge, before the work, before the endless gray present of production and consumption. They reminded me that Thomas Wren had existed, had been a person with thoughts and feelings and connections, had been more than just a biological component in the Imperium's manufacturing base. But the dreams faded quickly upon waking. Overwhelmed by the reality of the work, drowned out by the noise and the pain and the exhaustion. Within seconds of the klaxon sounding, they were gone, forgotten, lost like everything else, like childhood, like family, like hope. All of it consumed by the forge, all of it sacrificed to the great machine of production. The breaking point came during a night shift, hour 19 of 22. My augmetic hand had started malfunctioning. The joints were seizing. The neural interface was cutting in and out. One moment I had full control. The next moment, nothing. Just dead metal hanging from my wrist. I was falling behind quota, falling behind significantly. The numbers scrolled across my optical display. Red warnings, productivity alerts, failure indicators. Panic set in. Real animal panic that broke through the chemical dampeners and the exhaustion and the decades of conditioning. I worked faster, pushed my failing body beyond its limits, ignored the pain, ignored the warning indicators from my internal augmetics, ignored everything except the desperate need to meet quota, to avoid notice, to survive. My chest made a terrible popping sound. I tasted blood, coppery, thick, filling my mouth, My vision went gray. My legs gave out. I fell. Right there at Station 447, collapsed onto the metal floor. Blood leaked from my mouth, from my nose. The respirator in my chest was making wrong sounds. Grinding, stuttering, failing. The production line did not stop, could not stop, would never stop. I lay on the metal floor, watching the conveyor continue its endless rotation above my head, watching shells move past, empty, filled, sealed. Moving on to Station 448, to the next worker, to the next component in the great machine. Everything continued without me. The line did not care that I had fallen, did not notice, did not adjust, just kept moving, kept producing, kept serving the Omnissiah. A servitor picked me up eventually. How long I lay there, I do not know. Minutes, maybe. Hours. Time had lost meaning. The servitor's mechanical arms were gentle, careful, programmed to avoid causing unnecessary damage to salvageable materials. It carried me through the corridors to the medical bay. I thought this was the end. Thought they would evaluate me and decide I was finished. Would take me to the conversion forges. Would strip away my consciousness. Would turn me into what Gren had become, what Sarai had become, what everyone became eventually. But fortune is strange. If fortune is even the right word, the damage was not terminal. Severe, yes. Critical, yes. But repairable. The tech priests ran diagnostics, scanned my systems, read the data, made their calculations. The respirator had failed. Multiple internal hemorrhages, organ stress fractures, but nothing that could not be fixed with proper augmentation. They opened me up, replaced the failed respirator with a better model, reinforced my cardiovascular system with synthetic vessels, installed a stimulant pump that fed combat-grade drugs directly into my bloodstream on demand, upgraded my neural inhibitors to suppress fear and pain and most other higher emotions that might interfere with productivity. When they finished, I was more machine than ever. Maybe 70% augmetic now, 30% organic material, maybe less. They sent me back to Station 447, back to work. The new augmetics functioned perfectly, better than my original equipment, better than human. I could work longer, endure more, feel less. My productivity increased by 12%. 12% was noted, approved, praised even. The investment in my repair and upgrade had been justified. I was valuable again, worth maintaining, worth keeping functional. But something had changed inside me, some fundamental shift that the augmetics could not detect, some realization that the tech priests could not measure. I was no longer Thomas Wren. Not really. That person was gone. Had died on the floor of the manufactorum at age 28. Had died and been replaced with something else. Something that looked like Thomas Wren. That had his memories. That continued his function, but was not him. Not anymore. I was 31 years old. By Forge World standards, ancient, a survivor, a statistical anomaly. Most workers died or were reassigned by 25. The few who made it to 30 were either incredibly lucky or incredibly valuable. I was neither. I was just too stubborn to die, too afraid of what came after to give the Mechanicus any excuse to take me. The dreams stopped around this time. The upgraded neural inhibitors saw to that. Dreams were inefficient. Dreams were waste. Dreams were biological noise that interfered with optimal performance. Better to strip them away. Better to exist in the pure present of production. Shell, verify, fill, seal, place, repeat. No past, no future. Just the eternal now of the manufacturing process. But something remained. Something the augmetics could not quite erase. Some fragment of consciousness that persisted despite everything. I do not know what to call it. Not hope. Hope was a luxury I could not afford. Not humanity. Humanity was something I had lost piece by piece over 23 years. Maybe it was just awareness. Maybe it was just the last dying spark of a mind that refused to go completely dark. Whatever it was, it made me see, made me understand, made me recognize the truth of what we were. We were not workers. Not really. We were sacrifices, offerings to the great machine of the Imperium. We were burned as fuel in the engine of conquest, consumed to produce the weapons that maintained humanity's place among the stars. Our suffering was not tragic, was not meaningful, was not even noticed. It was just the natural operation of a system too vast for individual lives to matter. We were the Emperor's tithe, the price humanity paid for survival in a hostile galaxy. Every bolt round we manufactured would kill someone somewhere, would punch through alien flesh or heretic armor, would serve the endless war machine that was the Imperium of man. And we were the ones who made it possible. We were the foundation, the biological manufacturing base, the meat mechanism that produced death for the glory of the Golden Throne. Without us, the Imperium would falter. Without us, the Guard would run out of ammunition. Without us, the endless war would be lost. We were essential. We were necessary. We were the sacrifice that kept humanity alive in a galaxy that wanted it dead. This was not comforting. This was not noble. This was just truth. Cold, clear, absolute. The realization came to me during a maintenance shutdown. The line was still for the first time in months. Real maintenance, not just running repairs. The noise dropped to a low hum. I stood at station 447, the same place I had stood for 23 years, looked down at my augmetic hands, looked at the dried chemical stains on the floor, looked at the conveyor that had carried billions of shells past me. I was going to die here. Not might. Was going to. Either my body would fail completely, or my mind would break. There was no third option, no retirement, no escape. The mechanicus does not let components retire. Components serve until they break. Then they are recycled. The thought should have filled me with despair, but I was too far gone for despair. The neural inhibitors had stripped those emotions away. I just felt cold understanding. This was reality. Fighting it was pointless. The only choice was acceptance. The only freedom was serving until I could not serve anymore. But maybe, I thought, maybe there could be a record. Maybe someone, sometime, could know we existed, could know we suffered, could know we were human once before the forge consumed us. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could hope for. Not escape, not salvation, just witness, just acknowledgement that we had lived, that we had mattered, even if only to ourselves. I returned to work when the shutdown ended, took my place, picked up a shell, began the process. This was my prayer, this was my worship, this was my entire reason for existing, not out of love for the Emperor or faith in the machine god. Just because continuing was all that remained. Because giving up meant death, and death meant they won. Meant the forge had consumed me completely. Meant Thomas Wren had never really existed at all. Months passed. A year. I stopped counting. My body continued to break. More augmetics, more repairs. At 32, they replaced my jaw with a mechanical prosthetic after cancer ate through the bone. At 33, they installed cognitive enhancers after neurological scans showed declining function. Each modification made me more efficient, more productive, more machine, less human. The worker at station 446 collapsed one day, massive stroke, dead before hitting the floor. Age 27. They replaced him within an hour. A young woman, 16 maybe, fresh assessment brand, still healing, terrified eyes. I looked at her with my augmetic optics and felt nothing. The neural inhibitors had stripped away even the capacity for sympathy. She was just another component, another worker who would serve and die and be replaced. Just like I would be eventually, just like everyone was. I was 34 when they came for me. The Skitari, 2 of them, marching down the line with mechanical precision. I knew before they reached my station, knew with absolute certainty, this was my turn, this was the end. The final mark had been added to my file. The threshold had been crossed. I was no longer worth maintaining as a worker, would be more useful as a servitor. They stopped at station 447, looked at me with their augmetic optics, scanned my identification brand, verified my identity against their orders. Subject Thomas Wren, one of them said. Voice flat, emotionless. Alpha 794 Sigma 447. You are to report for reassignment immediately. Come with us. I set down my tools. Carefully. Precisely. The way I'd done millions of times before. Looked at station 447 one last time. The worn metal. The chemical stains. The place where I had spent 26 years of my life. Then I walked away. Between the Skitari, down the line, through the great doors, toward the conversion forges. The walk seemed to take forever and no time at all. Through corridors I had never seen, past chambers where other workers stood at other stations performing other tasks, past servitors moving through their programmed routines, past tech priests conducting their arcane business. Everything continued around me. The forge did not pause, did not care, did not notice one more worker being led to conversion. The conversion forges were deep in the heart of the manufactorum. I had never been to this section. Workers did not come here willingly. The air was thick with the smell of burning flesh and machine oil and chemical preservatives. The walls were lined with surgical tables, thousands of them stretching into orange haze distance, and on the tables, bodies, some screaming, some silent, some already empty, being modified, being lobotomized, being reduced from human to servitor in the same mechanical process that had defined my entire life. They strapped me to a table, metal, cold, the same grooves for blood drainage, the same restraints. I did not resist. Resistance was pointless. The Skitari would just activate their shock pikes, would cause pain to force compliance. Better to cooperate, better to accept what was coming, better to die with some small measure of dignity intact. A Magos approached. I could not see his face through the layers of augmentation, just red optical sensors, just brass and steel and cables. He carried the tools of lobotomy, drills, saws, neural interface spikes, the instruments that would strip away my consciousness and reduce me to a programmable biological component. He paused before beginning, examined a data slate, read my file, clicked his Vox unit in what might have been approval. Subject Thomas Wren, he said. Station 447, line 681. 26 years continuous service. Total units produced, 467,231,912 bolt rounds. Quality metrics, acceptable. Productivity, consistently above minimum standards. Neural profile, suitable for advanced servitor conversion. Cognitive patterns will be partially preserved for complex task requirements. 467 million shells. That was my life. That was my contribution. 26 years of work reduced to a single number. I had manufactured 467 million ways to kill someone, had spent more than 2 decades doing nothing except producing death for the glory of the Imperium. The number was so large it had no meaning. The Magos positioned the first drill against my skull. I felt the cold metal against my skin, heard the high whine as the motor activated. This was it, the end. Thomas Wren was about to stop existing, would be erased, edited, reduced to just enough consciousness to follow programming. I wanted to feel something, wanted fear or rage or even relief. But the neural inhibitors had stolen even my capacity to mourn my own death. I could only watch with detached interest as the drill descended, as it touched my skull, as it began to bite through bone, as my life as a thinking being came to its end. The pain was extraordinary, the one thing the inhibitors could not completely block. Pain that came from the destruction of the brain itself. I screamed the way I had screamed at age 8. Screamed the way everyone screams when the machine consumes them. The Magos did not pause, just continued with mechanical precision, drilling, cutting, installing neural interface spikes, preparing my brain for lobotomy. I felt my thoughts fragmenting, memories dissolving. Blue, my mother's face, Sarai, Gren Station 447, Shell, Verify Fill, Seal, Place, all breaking apart, being overwritten by programming, by imperatives. Serve, obey, function. The drill went deeper. Consciousness flickered, dimmed, started to die. And in that final moment, that last second before Thomas Wren ceased to exist, I thought, let there be a record. Let someone know we existed, that we lived, that we suffered, that we were human once. But there is no record. There is no witness. There is only the production line, only the endless consumption, only the machine. I am Servitor Unit TRN 447. I install propellant charges. I do this with perfect efficiency. I do this without thought. I do this until my biological components fail. Then I will be recycled. Nothing is wasted. Everything serves. Praise the Omnissiah. Praise the machine god. The quota must be met. Production continues. Forever. Record of subject Thomas Wren. Worker designation Alpha 794 Sigma 447. Servitor conversion completed 013.M42. Servitor Unit TRN 447. Assigned to Line 681 Maintenance Duties. Service duration post-conversion 17 standard years. Total service life 43 years. Final disposition, biological components failed 030.M42. Organic material processed for corpse starch production. Augmetic components refurbished and redistributed to new servitor units. Production record 592,718,341 bolt rounds manufactured over total service life. Quality control within acceptable parameters. Overall efficiency rating, adequate. Recommendation, current worker processing procedures deemed acceptable. Continue standard protocols. The Omnissiah is satisfied. Production continues.